A properly cooked roast should be juicy and tender on the inside and have a beautiful caramelized crust on the outside. To achieve a nice caramelized crust, the roast is first seared. This can be done on the stovetop, but the process can be very messy and cumbersome. We prefer to sear the meat in a hot oven that has been preheated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Place the roast into the oven and let it sear uncovered for approximately 20 to 30 minutes, or even up to 40 minutes for very large roasts. Any longer than this, and the crust can start to burn and create bitter flavors in the meat. Also, the juices will be squeezed out from the center of the roast, evaporate, and eventually dry out the meat. As you learned in the searing lesson, searing does not seal in the juices. It simply helps to create more flavor and color. Once a nice crust has formed, the oven temperature will need to be lowered. Note: the temperature you choose to finish the roast at will determine the final result of your roast, so it is very important to understand how the chosen temperature will impact the meat. Roasting can be finished at temperatures between 350 and 250 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, the crust will not burn as the roast finishes cooking. If you like your roast with varying degrees of doneness throughout, the temperature will need to be turned down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit to finish the roasting process. At this temperature, you can see the exterior portion of the meat is well done and gradually becomes rarer and juicier towards the center. The intense heat cooks the roast much faster and more unevenly. For some, the varying textures and flavors throughout the meat are desirable. Now, if you like your roast evenly cooked throughout, the temperature will need to be turned down to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. This slow and low cooking process will produce a more evenly cooked roast throughout. This is especially important if you like your meat cooked medium rare to medium. Here, you can see the meat is evenly cooked all the way through. This gentle cooking process prevents the muscle fibers from tensing up and squeezing out excessive moisture during roasting. The result is a juicier roast once cooked. Even though the slow and low cooking takes a bit longer, the advantages with this method are well worth it. Once you've decided which temperature you want to finish roasting at, it is best to remove the roast from the oven after it has been seared. Leave the oven door open for about 2 to 5 minutes to allow the excess heat to quickly escape. This will also give the roast a chance to cool just a bit so it doesn't continue to cook at such a high temperature. While you're waiting for the oven temperature to drop, take this opportunity to turn the roast. Turning redirects the internal flow of juices and helps to evenly distribute the heat towards the center. This will result in a juicier and more evenly cooked roast. Once the desired lower temperature has been reached, the focus is now to cook the roast to the desired doneness. Depending on the size of the roast, you will have to estimate how long the roast will need to be in the oven to cook it to your liking. It is important to remove the roast from the oven and turn it approximately every 30 minutes, or at least a couple of times during the entire roasting period. To help keep the meat moist, it is also important to baste the roast a couple of times with the fatty pan juices below. If there is not enough fat, you can use a bit of butter to baste the roast. Ideally, turning and basting should be done at the same time, so you are not opening the oven door too often and letting out too much heat. Continue to roast the meat to the desired doneness.